Everyone in that room thought it was over when I signed the paper. My sister was still wiping tears from her face. But it was not over. It ended 9 minutes later in a hallway. A phone rang. Her lawyer was on the other end. And the smile disappeared from her face completely. Before you watch full story, comment below from which country are you watching. Don't forget to subscribe for more amazing stories. The pen was still in my hand when my sister Maya started crying. Not the quiet kind of crying. The loud, relieved, theatrical kind, the kind that fills a room and demands attention. She pulled her husband Rayhan into a hug right there in the attorney's office, and he lifted her slightly off the ground the way people do when they have just won something large. Their attorney Mr. Siddiqui sat across the table with the particular stillness of a man trying not to look too pleased with himself. Maya's mascara was running. She was laughing through the tears. I sat with the signed waiver on the table in front of me and watched all of it very carefully. I had been watching carefully for 6 weeks. Nobody in that room knew that yet. I should go back and explain how I arrived at that moment, because the scene in the attorney's office only makes sense once you understand what the 14 months before it had cost me, and what I had quietly discovered in the 3 weeks before I picked up that pen. My mother's illness began with a fall in the kitchen on a Wednesday in March. A fractured hip, which became a surgery, which revealed during preoperative screening that she had been living with an undiagnosed cardiac condition for what the doctors estimated was several years. She was 67. She was also, I learned in the weeks that followed, not as financially straightforward as I had believed. She owned the family house, a 3-bedroom property in a quiet residential area that had appreciated significantly over the years, and she had a modest savings account, and she had never updated her estate documents after my father passed 8 years earlier. I am the younger daughter. I work as a forensic accountant for a mid-sized firm that handles financial investigations for insurance companies and occasionally for legal proceedings. My work is the kind that requires patience with numbers, suspicion of round figures, and the professional habit of asking where money actually goes rather than where someone says it went. I am precise by training and by temperament. I make my colleagues uncomfortable at dinner parties by pointing out discrepancies on restaurant bills. I moved back into my mother's house 3 weeks after the surgery. Maya did not. Maya lives 40 minutes away by car. She has 2 children, a husband who works in imports, and a lifestyle that requires, as best I can tell, the constant management of appearances. She called our mother every few days. She visited on Sundays, occasionally, when there was no prior engagement. She brought food sometimes, the kind that photographs well and requires no cooking, and she sat with our mother for an hour, perhaps 90 minutes, and then she left. I do not say this to perform resentment. I say it because it is accurate, and because what happened later only makes sense if you understand who was present and who was not. I was the one who managed the medication schedule. I was the one who drove to the hospital for the follow-up appointments, 3 of which required full-day stays. I was the one who spoke to the cardiologist and the physiotherapist and the home care coordinator, and who built the spreadsheet that tracked my mother's recovery benchmarks week by week. I was the one who slept in the room adjacent to hers for the first 4 months because she was afraid of falling again in the night. I did not mind this at the time. She was my mother. It was not a calculation. What I did not understand, until much later, was that Maya had been making a different kind of calculation entirely. The first sign came 11 months into my mother's illness, during a period when she had stabilized enough that the cardiologist had described her trajectory as manageable with consistent care. My mother was not going to die imminently. She was, however, going to require sustained support, and the house, the asset, the property that had been quietly appreciating for 22 years, was going to eventually pass to both of us in equal shares under the existing will. Maya invited me for tea at her house on a Saturday afternoon. Rayhan was there, which was unusual. He sat at the head of the dining table with a leather folder in front of him and the posture of a man who had rehearsed his lines. Maya poured the tea. Neither of them asked about our mother for the first 12 minutes, which I noted because it was the first time in 11 months that her condition had not been the first topic of conversation. Then Rayhan opened the folder. Inside were what he described as property assessments, an outstanding utility debt he claimed was attached to the house, and a document he referred to as a maintenance liability projection, a term I had never encountered in any professional or personal context. The numbers were presented in red. There were columns. There were highlighted figures. The visual architecture of the whole thing was designed to communicate crisis. Maya explained, in a voice she uses when she wants to sound reluctant about something she has clearly rehearsed, that the house was in a more complicated financial position than anyone had realized. That the debt attached to it would, upon transfer, become a shared liability. That she and Rayhan had consulted with their attorney, Mr. Siddiqui, who I had not yet met, and he had advised that the cleanest solution was for me to sign an inheritance waiver, relinquishing my share of the estate. In exchange, Maya would assume full responsibility for the outstanding liabilities and ensure our mother's ongoing care costs were covered. She said this with tremendous sadness. She reached across the table and held my hand. I looked at the numbers in the folder. I said I would need some time to think. Rayhan said that was completely understandable, though he noted that the utility debt had a resolution window attached to it and that delays would create complications. Maya nodded at exactly the right moment, which told me the nod had been practiced. I drove home and I did not think about what they had said. I thought about the folder. I am a forensic accountant. The folder was my area. I spent the following 4 evenings going through the documents with the same methodology I use at work: verify the source, cross-reference the figures, identify what is absent. The utility debt Rayhan had cited did not appear in any public record attached to the property. The assessment figures were outdated by 3 years and had been selectively presented without the corresponding market appreciation data, which would have shown the house had increased in value by more than 30% in the same period. The maintenance liability projection was not a real document category in any legal or financial framework I could locate. It was a formatted spreadsheet. Anyone could make one. There was no debt. There was no crisis. There was a folder designed to look like both. I bought a small digital recorder at an electronics shop on my way home from work on a Thursday. I tested it in my car. I called Maya the following morning and told her I had been thinking about what she and Rayhan had said, that I had some remaining concerns I wanted to understand better before making a decision, and that I thought it would be helpful to meet with Mr. Siddiqui directly so I could ask my questions in a more formal setting. Maya agreed immediately. She seemed, on the phone, almost warm. People who believe the outcome is already determined tend to be accommodating about the process. We met at Mr. Siddiqui's office the following Tuesday. The office was on the 4th floor of a commercial building, with the kind of furnishing that signals professional authority without actually conveying it: heavy desk, framed credentials, a globe that nobody has ever spun. Maya wore what I can only describe as a concerned sister outfit. Rayhan stood near the door. I noted the door. I had activated the recorder before I entered the building. I asked my questions with great care. I asked what would happen if I chose not to sign the waiver. I asked whether the debt Mr. Siddiqui's documents referenced could be verified through the Municipal Property Office. I asked what legal mechanism allowed a maintenance liability projection to reduce a beneficiary's inheritance entitlement. Mr. Siddiqui's answers were instructive. He confirmed figures that I knew were false. He described a legal framework that does not exist. He told me, with the fluency of someone who had given this explanation before, that my signing was the only reasonable option if I did not want to expose myself to financial and legal consequences. Maya added several things about family and practicality. Rayhan said nothing, but at one point, when I expressed hesitation, he said very clearly, "If you try to contest this after the fact, we will make the process expensive for you." He said it quietly. He said it looking at his phone. He said it as though it were a minor administrative note. The recorder was in the inner pocket of my jacket. It was running. I told them I was ready to sign. The waiver was produced. Mr. Siddiqui placed a pen on the document at a precise angle. Maya's hand went to her mouth. I picked up the pen. I signed every page. What none of them knew was that 40 minutes earlier, sitting in my car in the building's parking structure, I had forwarded a complete evidence package to 3 places simultaneously: the Provincial Bar Association's complaints portal, which handles attorney misconduct, the Civil Court's electronic documentation system, where I had filed a preliminary fraud declaration, and the personal email of a senior partner at the largest estate litigation firm in the city, who was a former colleague of my supervisor and who had agreed, after a 30-minute phone call the previous week, to review the matter on a priority basis. The waiver I had just signed was already the subject of an active legal filing at the moment the pen left the page. What happens next, I want to describe precisely, because it is the part that people always want to know. Maya was still holding the documents when her phone rang. She did not look at the screen. She was so certain about that call, so completely sure it was her friend Nadia, who she had invited for lunch to celebrate, that she pressed speakerphone without even checking the name. She was standing in the hallway just outside the office door, documents pressed against her chest, her voice still carrying that warm, victorious energy from inside the room. Han, Yolo. The voice on the other end was a man. Fast. Almost breathless. Maya Baji, yeah Cameron Hoon, Siddiqui Sahab ko office se mui abhi bar portal pex submission mili hai, reference number apki file se match kar raha hai, main Siddiqui Sahab ko reach nahi kar paraha, apko unhi immediately. Maya went completely still. County submission. Her voice had changed. That warmth, that winter's warmth, was gone. Not faded. Gone. The way a light goes when the switch is cut, not dimmed. Fraud declaration. Civil Court main file hui hai. Aaj Suba. Or Bar Association main be complaint Ayi hai Siddiqui Sahab ko khilaf. Timings dek kolag raha hai ya sab tab hua jab wo lady signing kuliya and RT. Heli si plan the ya sab. Silence. Then Maya looked down at the documents in her hands. My signature on every page. The waiver she had spent 6 weeks arranging. The paper she had believed, until approximately 45 seconds ago, was her victory. She looked up toward the elevator. The doors were already closed. I was already gone. I did not go back upstairs. The legal process took 4 months. The waiver was nullified on the grounds of documented coercive fraud. Mr. Siddiqui's license was suspended pending the bar investigation, which is still ongoing at the time I am writing this. The estate passed to both daughters as originally specified in my mother's will. Maya and I have not spoken since the court issued its ruling. I do not expect that to change. My mother does not know the full details. I have decided she does not need to. She is stable. She is still in the house. I visit on Tuesdays and Thursdays and every other Sunday, which is the same schedule I kept during the 14 months of her illness, and which continues to mean that I am the one who knows the name of her cardiologist and the one who updates the medication spreadsheet and the one who sits with her on quiet evenings when the house is otherwise empty. That has not changed. I did not do it to win something. I did it because she is my mother. What I want to say about what I felt at the end of all of this is that it was not what I expected. I had expected relief. What I found instead was a kind of tired clarity, the specific exhaustion that comes from having been right about something you very much wished you had been wrong about. I had wanted the folder to be real. I had wanted there to be an actual problem they were trying to solve, badly and selfishly, but genuinely. What the documents showed was that there was no problem at all. They had constructed one from scratch and presented it to me with held hands and borrowed sadness. That is a different thing to absorb. I still have the recorder. I have not deleted the files. I keep the folder, my folder, the real one, with the cross-referenced figures and the verified property records and the printout of the bar submission with its timestamp, in the bottom drawer of my desk at work. I do not look at it often. But I know it is there. Here is what I have been thinking about since. There is a specific kind of vulnerability that comes from loving someone. Not romantic love, the other kind, the long, unglamorous, administrative kind. The kind where you drive to the hospital on a Tuesday morning and you learn the medication schedule and you sleep in the next room because someone is afraid of falling. That kind of love creates a particular exposure, because it tends to make you believe that the people around you are operating in the same register of sincerity. You assume shared terms. You assume that a folder full of numbers represents a real problem because why would someone do that to you otherwise? My sister knew I loved our mother. She built the folder knowing I would not want to create conflict during an already difficult period. She timed the waiver meeting for when I was most tired. None of this was accidental. So I want to ask you something. Not as a closing line. As an actual question, because I think it is a question worth sitting with. If someone you loved, someone who knew exactly how much you were carrying and exactly how tired you were, handed you a folder full of numbers and told you the only way through was to sign something, how long would it take you to open the folder yourself? And when you opened it, would you know what you were looking at?